healed, whole, perfect, just as you are. I am. I am healed, I am whole, I am perfect as I am. Let's breathe that in together 3 times strong and deep. I am healed, I am whole, I am perfect as I am. I am healed, I am whole, I am perfect as I am. On this next exhale, let's exhale audibly. Just go ahead and bring us back into the room. Healed, whole, and perfect as I am. I'm safe. I believe it with every fiber of my being, even and especially when there is what seems to be proof to the contrary all around us, that we're not safe, that it's a scary world, there's crazy stuff going on. We could all have a very convincing argument of that individually and collectively, I know. But when we worry and we fret over all of the outer circumstances, we're forgetting and we're not using the power that we are, the power that is created in us, through us, as us, by the divine moving through us. We can't forget that power. And that's why last week when I talked about that quote from the Science of Mind magazine that's talked about going into the cave, even if it's reluctantly, leaning into the discomfort, going into the dark places, even reluctantly, leaning in is important. Y'all know I'm a country girl. I was raised on a farm and lots of cows and all kinds of animals all around. You know, interesting thing about most animals, they run away from the storm. Cows will take off running away from the storm. Most animals do. The only one, as a matter of fact, that I know of that does not is the buffalo. And the buffalo runs toward the storm. It charges headfirst into the storm. Now think about it. The cows, they're running the other way trying to get away. Bad things are coming. Gotta go. Which just prolongs the suffering, prolongs the pain, because the storm is coming at them. It's going to catch them. It's going to be on them. It's going to keep going with them, right? They're running with the storm in a way. The buffalo, on the other hand, they're going right into it, minimizing the pain and the suffering. How many times do we run away from, we resist something that doesn't feel good when actually we're just keeping it in play? We're just keeping it there. When we resist, it's when we face it head on, look right at it and say, this is not the truth of me. I know there's scary things going on, but that's not the truth of me. It's not the truth of God. It's not the truth of our potential. It's not the truth with the capital higher T, right? Albert Einstein said, reality is just an illusion, albeit a very persistent one, right? I get that. I get it. It's persistent. It gets our attention and it holds on. So our job is to continually come back to center, as I say over and over, to come back and to surrender. So just before service, someone said, I hope you're going to speak today about how we deal with all the mess in the world. How do we deal with that? I mean, how do we know what we know and then just deal with all the stuff that's going on? And I said, well, I'm going to see what Spirit has to say through me about that. But what comes to mind first and foremost is surrender. Surrender, but not surrender like, I give up. You take it. Your turn, God. Go. We're one with God, with the infinite, right? We're part of it. We're part of it. So when I say surrender, we stop trying to fix, as I like to say, the hair in the mirror, and we focus on the hair on our head. We stop trying to fix the outer conditions, and we come into the power and the truth of who we are. So we surrender, but we don't just sit around and wait for something good to happen. Go, I surrendered. Yay me. No, we surrender. Then we listen, and then we act. We surrender, we listen, we act. And while we're surrendering, while we're listening, we do that beautiful message from what Ned shared with us, right? We assimilate the truth of who we are. We marinate in it so that we're moving from that peace. We're moving from that clarity and not moving from the chaos and running with the storm. We're just facing it and saying, okay, what is mine to do here? I'm going to sink into this. No outer circumstance is more powerful than the inner condition that we get to cultivate with the infinite. Nothing is more powerful than that. And where two or more are gathered, it gets amplified. So thank you for joining me this morning to amplify that energy and to be the buffalo. I'm going to talk about buffaloes, bees, and monkeys this morning. That's what what you signed up for. Buffaloes, bees, and monkeys. So the buffalo, it leans in, it charges the storm, it does not run away, it minimizes. You see, we have dominion over our thoughts, and our thoughts create our beliefs, which create our experiences. So we have more power than we realize to create something good, to create something different. We discount that inner connection, that inner clarity so often and say, I'm just so confused, I don't know what to do. We've all been there. We've all said that. I'm just so confused, I don't know what to do. Sink in, drop in, because you know what? God's not confused. There's no confusion in the mind of God, and I am one with it. I am one with it. That mind is my mind now. I remember when we took our ministerial exams, that's something that Dr. Ernest Holmes, who founded this teaching, said a lot. God's mind is my mind now. So here we were about to have our oral panels, and we're all looking at each other. Are you okay? Yes, God's mind is my mind now. Right? Reaffirming that there's an answer. There's an answer there, and I am open to the clarity. But then once you speak that affirmation that God's mind is my mind now, or I am open to the clarity for this situation, whatever it is. I'm open to the clarity of what is mine to do next on my spiritual journey or my professional journey or my relationship journey or whatever it is. Then here's a key part. You have to expect that that's going to work. You have to expect and allow the answer to come. Expect and allow it to come. And then, so we surrender, we think, and then we take action. We act on it. We act on it. You see, because between the milestones in life and the tombstones at the end, there's a whole lot of living, right? In that dash area, there's a whole lot of stuff that could happen. And we get to be part of that. We're not just on what's coming next? No, we're co-creating with the infinite. And I know it's hard sometimes to stay that course, but that's what I'm imploring all of us to do, to stay the course of how can I show up as love and peace in this moment, in this situation. How can I be the solution that I'm looking for? How can I be that? Ned talked about in that reading, Raymond Charles Barker talked about it's the nature of the creative process to take form, and it's the nature for us, our nature, to direct it. It's the nature of the infinite to take form. It's our nature to direct it. That may seem kind of weird. I thought it was blasphemous when I first came into this teaching. I'm like, oh no, that's putting too much, giving me too much power. No, because the one created everything in existence and gave of itself into creation in the form of everything that we see and feel and hear and know. So we are imbued with that power, with that presence. And the blasphemous part is when we use it against ourselves, when we don't direct this beautiful, loving, creative energy in a positive direction, when we instead buy into a feeling of helplessness, of worthlessness, of hopelessness, because you're not. You are more powerful than you know. You create things out of midair, out of nothing. Like my daddy in the kitchen. He could just make anything. I think we had no groceries. Next thing you know, there's this feast. And I think I married my father because she does the same thing. But we're like that with the infinite. We can create out of what seems to be, no way I can create a good solution out of this, by being it first. But that's the key. We have to step into, and that's the hardest part sometimes. We have to step into and be the transformer, right? Allow the chaos around us to be transformed through us into the peace that is us. The peace that is us. Stop reflecting on the sidelines of life about, and they should do this and I should do that and maybe this will happen. Stop reflecting on the sidelines and start directing from the inside. Stop reflecting and start directing this beautiful, creative, loving presence. So in December, I shared with everyone that it would be a great idea to pick up this wonderful book by Mark Nepo, and that I was going to be sourcing it all year long in 2022, and I have been a lot. And it's called the Book of Awakening. It's one of my favorite books. It's our daily reading for every day. So on this note of sitting on the sidelines or jumping in, I'd like to read you something from Mark Nepo, the Book of Awakening. The Monkey and the River. It is said a great Zen teacher asked an initiate to sit by a stream until he heard all the water had to teach. After days of bending his mind around the scene, a small monkey happened by, and, in one seeming bound of joy, splashed about in the stream. The initiate wept and returned to his teacher, who scolded him lovingly. The monkey heard, you just listened. With the best of intentions, we often build false careers of studying the river without ever getting wet. In this way, we can ponder great philosophy without ever telling the truth, or analyze our pain without ever feeling it, or study holy places without ever making where we live sacred. In this way, we can build a cathedral on the water's edge, spending all our time keeping it clean. Or we can count our money or say our prayers without ever spending anything or ever feeling God's presence. In this way, we can play music or make love skillfully without ever feeling the music or our passion. The apprentice was brought to tears because the monkey, slapping and yapping its way in the river, had landed in a moment of joy, and the apprentice knew that all his reverence and devotion and meditation hadn't brought him the joy of a monkey. The river, of course, is the ongoing movement and moment of our lives. It is the current that calls us to inhabit our lives. And no matter how close we come, no matter how much we get from staying close with a sensitive heart, nothing will open us to joy but entering the stream. Nothing will open us to joy but entering the stream, jumping in to life. And not sitting on the sidelines. We jump in when we remember the truth that we are a powerful creator and that we are one with a magnificent universe. We jump in and we take responsibility for what's going on in our lives. Now, that's not to shame or blame anyone who's a victim of anything, who's had something happen to them that's terrible. Please understand that. So often in New Thought and in any type of New Thought philosophy like unity or science of mind, people say, oh, you're just one of two things. They say, you're Pollyanna, you just focus on the good, never look at what's real. Or they say, you're about shaming the victim. No. We're about helping lift ourselves out of a victim consciousness, which is different than something happening to someone and someone being taken advantage of and that sort of thing. Be happy to go into more of that in class because it is kind of takes a lot of deep diving to really get it, right? To really get that I'm not bad. I'm not doing this spiritual journey wrong because something bad has happened to me, but at the same time, not staying in it, not making this, as I said last week, the problem the focus, but rather being the solution. So moving out of that, life is happening to me, and moving into life is happening through me is a game changer. It is a game changer. And it gets us into the creative process of directing this law. There's spiritual laws that govern the universe. Call it law of action, law of mind action, law of attraction, whatever you want to call it. But it is the input-output nature of the universe. What we give it, it gives back. And so when we take responsibility, that's the kind of responsibility I'm talking about. Then we create a world, our world, differently. And we create the outer world with everyone else differently because we're all connected, you know, that whole thing. And then, oh, I hear you. I hear it like bubbles over your heads. Wait, if we're all connected, what about those jerks that don't know what they're doing? What about them? We're still all connected. Whether you call them a jerk or you call them the face of God, doesn't matter. We're still all connected and they're still all the face of God. They just may be using this creative energy in a different direction because remember, we get to direct it. So that's where our free will comes in and we get to decide how it's going to flow through us. If it's going to show up as love or if it's going to show up as nastiness. This ability to create the world, right? To create our individual world and our collective world. So let's talk about the collective world for just a second. Back to my daddy. He was a beekeeper. My grandfather was a beekeeper. Some of my favorite memories was to be spending the day with my dad inside a little tiny building about the size of this part of the stage, a little white building we called the honey house. And in the honey house, you take the hives, the little frames out of the boxes, and you put them inside this big barrel with a crank. And I would stand there as a little kid and I'd turn as hard as I could and I'd get that thing going and the honey would sling out against the inside of the barrel, come down into this little spout. That was my favorite part. Open that spout and be like, I loved it. I'd eat honey until I made myself sick. So there was a story on the internet and I thought I could have written this story because the exact same thing happened to me as a kid. So if you've seen it on the internet, don't think, oh, Reverend Christy just took that story off the internet, made it her own. Actually, it is my story and it's hers too or his too or whatever. But the thing is, when you're doing that, you disrupt the bees a little bit, right? For a minute, they're like, hey, what's going on? You took my little frame. I was doing something with that. Where'd you go? And they're looking and they're flying and they're buzzing all around. Inevitably, these bees, some of them get stuck in the honey. They get stuck in the honey that's being pulled out of the frame. And I remember as a kid going, Daddy, they're going to die. They don't look good. What are we going to do? And he goes, oh, honey, don't worry about it. They'll take care of it. I said, who? He said, the other bees. It's okay. It's okay. Because what happens is they come in and they clean them off. The other bees come around and they clean. They start licking or I don't know, do bees lick? I guess they do. Anyway, whatever they do it to the other bees. They get all the honey off. There's stickiness to life. And in community, don't go around licking each other, but, in community, we do clean each other. We help each other. It's like the Buddhist tradition of washing vegetables by putting them in a pot and running your hand like this because they clean themselves when they bump up against each other, right? In community, we help cleanse the lens of our perception. We help each other to remember the truth of who we are and that we're not alone and that we're made perfect and we're beautiful and we're here on purpose and not to give up. When fear happens, when loss happens, when confusion happens, we're here for each other to clean and go through the stickiness of life. Remind each other it's going to be okay. It already is in the mind and the heart of God. It's already okay. God doesn't have any problems. Let's realign, reassimilate that truth so that we can project it, radiate it, be it. And you say, well, I'm doing my best over here, but what am I going to do? Well, how am I going to really make a difference? One person, I know you've heard this, you may not believe it, but one person really can make a difference. Like Keisha Thomas. You know who Keisha Thomas is? Keisha Thomas, 1996, Ann Arbor, Michigan. The Ku Klux Klan decided they were going to have a rally, a march. And so some counter-protesters showed up to say, yeah, we're not about that here. We don't want that hate here. And so one of the guys from the KKK had on his Confederate flag shirt and a jacket over it, and he infiltrated, I guess you could say, the counter-protesters. The jacket popped open, they saw that Confederate flag, and he started getting his butt kicked, like in a serious way. They were about to kill this guy. And this woman, this black woman, standing for everything he is not, threw herself on top of him and saved his life and said, no, we're not doing this. No one deserves to be hurt or killed. We're not doing this. One person made a difference in his life, and all of the people that saw that act of bravery and kindness and love. And then what about Elizabeth Cochran Seaman, also known as Nellie Bly, who in 1885, 87, somewhere like that, got herself admitted into a mental institution so that she could report on the horrible conditions being done there. Changed mental health facilities and launched investigative journalism, right? One person, brave enough to do something that radical, that wild. And then I know you know Rosa Parks, right? One person inspiring the civil rights movement. But let's back up a little bit because there's something you may not know. There was a woman, a young lady, a 15-year-old actually, 9 months before Rosa Parks, that inspired Rosa Parks. Her name was Claudette Colvin. And she said, no, ma'am, I will not give up this seat. She was actually the first one, the first black person to say, no, I will not give up my seat. 9 months before Rosa Parks did. One person, inspiring another person, inspiring another person. And there's one more I want to tell you about. This one, whoa. They're all whoa. But this one, can't believe I'd never heard of this one. Stanislav Petrov. Had to look down, make sure I was saying his name right. Stanislav Petrov. An elite Russian officer during the Cold War. His main job was to look at a computer screen. And if it looked like the U.S. had fired a nuclear missile, then his job was to tell the powers that be to fire one back. He's sitting there at his computer, and the computer goes off that the United States has launched a nuclear missile. I get cold chills just telling this story, just thinking about how close we came to probably not being here. He's sitting there looking at the screen, and he's thinking in 20 minutes, everything's going to be gone. And then they're going to fire back, and everything over there is going to be gone, you know? And he's like, it doesn't feel right. His instincts were telling him that the computer was not acting right, that it didn't go the way it normally, it didn't look right. It just didn't look like he thought it should look for that to be happening. And his gut just kept saying, don't do it. And he sat there for 20 minutes, waiting to either be right or to be dead. He sat there. And it was a malfunction in the computer system. This close to nuclear war during the Cold War that I didn't even know happened, right? And one person following their gut saved so many people. One person following their gut and their heart. It's powerful, y'all. We can do that. You can't do what I do. I can't do what you do. But together we do great things. That was something somewhere along the lines what Mother Teresa said. I can't do what you do. You can't do what I do. But together we do great things. And it's one little thing at a time. It's one phone call with your best friend who is grieving or who is sad or who is watching the news and is overwhelmed. And you're able to be a peace point. You're able to be a love connection. You're able to be the bee cleaning off the sticky of life. Not telling them not to feel it, not to go through it, but not to focus on that alone, but to focus on being the solution. We're here to be that difference, and we can be that difference, and we need to be that difference because there's so much love and healing that wants to take place by means of us. And so I thought I would close today with something that was written by my teacher, Edwin Gaines, one of my mentors. On this 4th of July weekend, it felt very, very appropriate. She posted this yesterday. It says, if you ever had an art class and were taught how to mix colors, you learned that if you mixed red and blue, you got a very lovely shade of purple. The color purple has been associated with spirituality and royalty. If we are to survive as a nation, we must learn to meld together the red states and the blue states, the Republicans and the Democrats, the fighters, the peacemakers, the disinterested and the nitpickers, the brave and the cowards. So here are actions that help the process of once again becoming the United States. Here's your note-taking part. Are you ready? Love God. Love yourself. Love your neighbors. But love your enemies too. Treat them the way you would like to be treated. Love those who despitefully use you and forgive yourself and them and pray for them. Stop blaming, shaming, criticizing, ridiculing, and chastising those who hold a different view. It is perfectly okay to disagree. It's not okay to be rude, mean-spirited, or downright nasty. Remember, that soul on the other side of the disagreement is a child of God and an important part of our universal spiritual family. Give yourself permission to love them as God loves them. I'll say that one again. Give yourself permission to love them as God loves them. That doesn't mean you agree with someone else who has a different view, but you can still love. Be strong, have faith, speak your peace, P-E-A-C-E, and your peace, P-I-E-C-E, with power. And listen with humility and respect. Instead of offering arguments, offer solutions. We can do this. We have to. Love is a great power, and you can not only use it, you can be it. So be the love, be the buffalo, be the monkey, be the bees, be the one, be the change. And so it is.